Hello, this is Tom Cahill. This is a video in my series which is going to be on my channel. Aussies Love Pedos. OZZIESLOVEPEDOS. I was just doing a bit of research just then, and I didn't delve into it, but I'll just replicate that now, right? I was on Google, and I put in Garry Burns with 2 R's, BURNS, and Truong Newton, TRUONG NEWTON, right? And what came up was Garry first. The first link was Garry Burns' LinkedIn profile, and it's quite interesting because it says here Garry Burns LinkedIn, Sydney area, gay activist at SM&B Pty Limited now, and also SM&B Pty Limited. Well, I don't know anyway. That's LinkedIn making some kind of summarization. Possibly he's got 2 jobs he's putting up at the same company. Now, this is very telling because Garry Burns is and has been on permanent sick benefit for an alleged gay bashing incident that allegedly happened to him at some stage in the past, and he's apparently got post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of it, which only comes out when people say things he doesn't like, otherwise he's fine. And he allegedly has to take antidepressants, and he's had psychologist reports and stuff like that written about him. But it doesn't affect his ability to, basically run businesses on the side, despite the fact he's not able to work, and also constantly sue people and extort money out of them, which is what he's done. Quite incredibly, in one of his cases, the case was in court, and he actually wrote a letter asking for some money and said he'd drop it. So he said, this is an anti-homosexual vilification case, and in the tribunal, whilst it was running, this has been accepted by the tribunal as a case. So it was an ongoing case, and he just said, well, I'll just drop it if you pay me, I think it was 20,000 AUD, Australian dollars. So I believe that was the amount. And this was obviously objected to very strenuously at that time. Normally he goes for people who don't have the money to pay for lawyers, and totally against any international conventions regarding freedom of speech. That people don't actually get to have lawyers, which is quite, they should get lawyers for free. In all the Western world, you get a lawyer for free with this type of case, but because of course this is a sort of subversive agenda, and it's been all done under the cover of dark. They're breaking all the rules they can, and they're picking on disabled victims. Like, for instance, his first victim was a guy who could hardly read. He was basically illiterate. I think he might have even been, technically he was illiterate. He couldn't read and write. And Garry Burns had him in the tribunal. The gentleman's sadly since died, but. They pick on disabled people. The latest person they've been picking on for the last few years is a guy called John Sunnell, Sunol, and John had an accident. He used to be a taxi driver, but they've had 70 cases accepted into the tribunal against him, and they're causing him all sorts of trouble. And also they've also been trying to fabricate things that they can complain about him. But that's another subject. I'll make a video about that. Or probably several videos, because it's absolutely disgusting. It's totally criminal. But in the case against the disabled man, this really quite profoundly mentally disabled man, Garry Burns bolted the tribunal hearing onto a criminal complaint he'd made. He said that the guy had been abusing him and had thrown a bottle at him, and the police came round, because Gary's always calling the police on people constantly. For things that he's normally made up that have never happened, but they never, bizarrely, obviously because he's working for Catherine Byrne, the Assistant Commissioner of Police in New South Wales. She's a subversive herself, which again there'll be more videos on. I'm quite happy to say that this is not this is not me just talking off the top of my head without knowing what I'm talking about. This is an easily provable fact, and she's taken an interest in these child abuse charities, and anyone who's from the UK who pays attention to these things that know that most of these child care and child abuse anti-child abuse charities generally involved with a lot of child abuse. She takes an active interest in that, and also all the false flag terrorism that's going in Australia. She's so brazen about it that it's quite amusing. Somebody actually posted it on the internet that she was going to be involved in a terrorist incident because she was going to a terrorism, an anti-terrorism or counter-terrorism meeting in Tel Aviv one week, and then in London the next week. So the two cities that have the most prominent false flag terrorism incidents, they're the most apt places to doing it up until now. Probably France seems to be starting to catch up now, but those two cities are very, very prevalent for pretend Muslim terrorism, which they do themselves. And this lady I know, she actually put it on the internet, and Catherine Burns is aware that she put this up, and she's still blaming Muslims for doing things that probably didn't even happen, I'd imagine. But either way, it's false flag terrorism, but in this case they're possibly hoaxes. Anyway, the point is, look, Garry Burns, you're putting Garry Burns, Mark Newton and Peter Truong, because it says here, view Garry Burns' professional profile on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the world's largest business network, helping professionals like Garry Burns discover inside connections to recommended job candidates, industry, and it's ... Mark Newton, Peter Truong. But that's obviously pulled, I would imagine that's pulled that off his profile somehow. And this is a really interesting thing, right? If you click on it, right, Garry Burns, gay activist at SM&B Pty Limited. Now, as I said, he's meant to be permanently, he's living off the taxpayer. He's not been working for a long time. So he's getting a full, big money for being disabled. So everything's getting paid for him, but he's also working at the same time. It's completely illegal, but he's just allowed to do whatever he wants at the minute in Australia. That's soon going to be put to an end. I'm going to put that to an end. Don't worry about that. But the point is here, look, people also viewed Peter Truong, sales at Duratec International Pty Limited, Catherine Bunn, independent marketing advertising professional, and Mark Newton, senior business systems analyst at US Bank. Peter French, company director at SM&B Pty Limited. Now, by the look of this Mark Newton character, this isn't the paedophile Mark Newton, is it? But this Peter Truong, Duratec Limited, I don't know whether this is going to be the paedophile one or not. And also, I don't know whether this is just LinkedIn trying to be helpful, and then putting the names together, because I put those names in. But remember, I did not put in Peter Truong, I put in Truong. And I did not put in Mark Newton, I put in Newton. So it is quite weird. There's another possibility, of course, and that could be that other people have been searching, trying to link the two together, put the three of them together, because of course we know that those two paedophiles, those two homosexual paedophiles, were active gay marriage activists. And like I've discussed before, whilst everybody who might tick a like or get like a rainbow photo on their Facebook, I'm not saying they're all paedophiles, they're mainly oblivious to it. Just at the same time, there are loads of people go to these pride marches to just get off their head and drink and drugs. They're not going there because they want to promote paedophilia, but they're being hoodwinked into it in a very similar way to in the past. Anytime you get any protest about anything in England, you used to get the sort of young socialists and Marxist groups would all appear there, and it would be like they kind of hijack other people's protests, but the other people at the protest didn't have any interest in being communists. They just make out as though, look, they're all here with us, and they've got lots of banners, and they, wear funny clothes, so it looks like there's more of them than what there is, but they're just carrying a lot of merchandise with them. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, because I don't actually know what this means, but in the past, we found a link between paedophile Garry Burns in Australia pretending to be an innocent gay. Incredibly, he's put on the court record that he thinks sodomy is disgusting, and he doesn't think it should be associated with gays or homosexuals, because he thinks that it basically, he's sort of saying that it's so disgusting it makes them look bad, which by his own rules would be vilifying homosexuals. You just couldn't make it up. They've chosen the absolutely worst point man they could have done, these pedos. They really have. It's quite incredible. Because, you see, normally with cultural Marxists, at least some of them are quite bright. I'm sure there's going to have been some of them who've resisted the idea of letting Burns do so much stuff, because he clearly doesn't do what he's told all the time, again, which will be gone into in other videos. But, you know, like things like he made a threat the day that the Sparkles the Pony stuff was put on the court record. He went back from the court, and I'm 6 hours behind Australia where I am currently. And by the time it was kind of early evening for me, somebody sent me the copy of, from his website, right, he posted, so he'd been in court, you know, not in the very early morning in Australia, but, you know, so it was like he'd gone into court, not the first hearing in the morning, you know, like around lunchtime or something, rushed back home, lied, and said that these people with black ski masks had, you know, basically accosted him or come up to his house in black ski masks and wearing black, I think, and they put this letter through his door, and it's clearly a letter that's been written with someone's left hand, right, and it's just basically saying they're going to kill him, and it's Bernard Gaynor's fault. You'll probably hear me mention Bernard Gaynor in the future, but Bernard Gaynor wouldn't have done this. Quite clearly Garry writing a letter to himself. The whole thing's completely made up, and considering the fact that he had said they had black ski masks on, he then, a couple of days later, accused a specific person of doing it, right? Or was that a couple of days later, or was that on the day? I forget. But either way, the story's preposterous, because if they've got black ski masks on, how are you going to know who they are? You know, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, so I'm getting a bit confused here. Possibly he actually did say that actually on the day, in this very, very short period of time. So the paedophile banter gets put on the court record, which you didn't know was going to get put on there. Then he rushes home, writes a death threat note to himself, then gets onto the police, then puts up the details of his complaint to the police on his website with the death threat letter, posts it all on the internet, and somebody told me about it, you know, by sort of like mid-time in the evening here, so it wasn't even late in the evening. So you see, the timing of it is so ridiculously improbable. He's clearly done it himself anyway. There's various other reasons how it's obvious he's done this, but you see, considering that he made that complaint against the disabled man in the past, and he said the guy had, you know, been abusing him and had thrown a bottle at him. The police went round that time, they took fingerprints off the bottle, and they found out they were Garry Burns's. Now, after that, I think it was in the anti-discrimination hearing, he then said that, or maybe he'd raised this with the police after that point, you know, at a later time, he said that there was graffiti on his door. Now, the police had already, you know, written their story, and, you know, from their notebooks or whatever, however it transpired, and they'd said, well, how can there be graffiti on his door? Because we went and knocked on his front door to get him to come out. So it's the most clear case of the police, you know, the police weren't doing anything wrong in this particular instance, at least the police who, you know, attended the call. They gave an honest account of what happened. So despite the overwhelming evidence that Garry Burns has made the whole thing up, you know, tried to fit someone up with a crime that he's caused himself, he's been caught out with it. That was then used in the well, it's not funny. It was used in the anti-discrimination tribunal as evidence that this guy was vilifying him. They gave him a fine, he was found guilty, and also he was made to apologise. He had to write an apology letter. And this is where it gets really sick. Right? Because he was illiterate, they actually said what he had to say in the apology letter. Now, that's completely illegal. You can't make someone apologise, because, for a start off, you can't tell someone in a court case that they have to admit that they're guilty. And you can't be saying sorry for something unless you're admitting you're guilty. And in this instance, there's overwhelming physical proof and witnesses in terms of two police who would read beyond any reasonable doubt that the whole thing's been made up. So it's absolutely scandalous. But anyway, I'm going to save this because I'm going to have a look at this Peter Truong, because I'm going to know sales at Duratec International Pty Limited. Actually, why not? I'll click on it now. Right? Brisbane, Australia, computer hardware. I think it's quite weird. I mean, he's Chinese, quite a lot of Chinese working computers. Present 8 years and 5 months. That would make sense if he was the pedo. I'm not saying this guy's the pedo. You know, I've got no axe to grind with this company or people called Peter Truong. I'm sure there's lots of them. But it's just weird that it's linked to Garry Burns. But what I'm saying is, if it says present 8 years and 5 months, you know, he's in prison, he's not going to update his profile very likely, is he? What's he going to put on it? It's best to just leave it as it is. So, yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I'd be very interested to know what you think. As I said, there's going to be lots more videos going up. I'm going to try and stick some up that are like as I'm finding things out, like this one, like impromptu ones. And also there'll be more detailed analysis. But either way, I mean, you know, some of these videos will just come to nothing. They won't get very many views. I might not even ever put this one up on the internet. But I just like to keep a record of things because, you know, people rather follow things in real time. And this is a real-time case. Garry Burns is definitely a paedophile. We've ascertained this. We know that he goes to all sex tourism locations where they rent children out. And we know he's a paedophile. So, you know, and his network's all linked, and he's a gay marriage activist, and all of them, you know, the sort of hardcore ones, the ones who aren't just going, yeah, I'm a gay marriage activist, whatever, yeah, let them do whatever they want. I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about the people who, like, have been driving it for a long time. It's clearly a euphemism for child abuse, because, like I've said, they want it to say marriage, because you can object to somebody having a kid, because you say, well, you're not married. And if you're, like, if it literally says married rather than civil partnership, even if they had all the exact same rights, they wouldn't be married insofar as getting children. It's a ruse to get children. People were telling me this years ago that gays are going to want to get married and they're going to want to have it exactly the same. And the reason is, obviously there's a few reasons for it, mainly just undermining women, undermining the importance of marriage, undermining the whole point of sex, which to one extent or another is basically to have children, undermining families. And of course, because all of these pedos are all communists, like Peter Tatchell and Garry Burns, they're all communists. Garry Burns doesn't necessarily talk. Maybe he is an admitted communist now. I don't know if he is or not. But he used to be he was known to be a communist sort of party member or, communist activist at university. And Peter Tatchell was wearing a little stupid star on his head when he went and allegedly tried to citizens arrest Mugabe, didn't he? So, and now, that's interesting. Peter Tatchell reckons he's got serious, mental, I think, problems, sort of got knocked on the head or something when he went to try and arrest Robert Mugabe, just walking up to him. I think that's all bollocks, but as I said, it's just another link between the two of them, making up stories about having injuries that I doubt they've actually got, So, anyway, my name's Tom Cahill. This is just one of my uploads in the Aussies Love Pedo series. I know this one's probably not very conclusive, but you never know, it might be. If anyone can help me out with any of this, I'd like to know what you can hear, what you have to say. And it's the 28th of January, 2016, and it's Thursday. So, thanks for listening. I'd really like to know what you have to say. And any ideas, I've got quite a lot of info here, but I am at the same time shooting in the dark. I'm well aware of the fact that there's going to be a lot more, and by putting out the videos, lots of these links that we can't actually prove yet, we know we're going to be there. They will be proven, because that's how it worked the last time when I was dealing with the same kind of people in England, albeit a lot more sophisticated, and they weren't putting up pedo banter Facebook pages and then trying to admit they're theirs and trying to make out I'm sick for noting them. Thanks a lot. Bye.